Sweetie Abochi is on hand with me as we get into the conversation on genetically modified organisms. Would you like to tell us about what we expect on this conversation and who's joining us?
Well, I'm sure you've already seen our guest in the middle with sandwiching Bismarck Tete, who is the Executive Director of the Peasant Farmers Association. We have other guests who will be joining us later, so we introduce them as and when they join us. Well, we have Samuel Edward Kariwe, who's the General Secretary of Agricultural Workers Union, also joining us on Zoom for the conversation. Now, these Peasants Farmers Association have some grievances. They're saying that if we allow genetically modified organisms, that is crops among others, into the country, there are some risks that we might face, both sanctions on international exports and all that. But they are here in the studio with us. The Executive Director is here in the studio with us, so we might as well hear from the horse's own mouth. Exactly what is your grievances? What is your issue about genetically modified organizations? On the back that this bill that was recently passed in March has been in existence since 2011. And we know that by 2050, some research that I was reading up on says that we would have to, cultivate more or fall on these genetically modified organizations to make up for the quantity of food that the world will need in order to feed everyone in this world. So what is your issue with genetically modified organizations?
Right.
Organisms,
right. Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. And I will say good morning to all our listeners and our viewers. First of all, you spoke about the act that was passed. That was the Biosafety Act. It was actually passed in 2011 by the Parliament of Ghana and assented by the President. The other act that was passed to complement the Biosafety Act is the Plant Variety Protection Act that was passed in 2022. So these two acts combined, they give powers and authority to the biosafety to approve the commercialization of GMOs in Ghana. Now, the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana, together with other stakeholders, a host of them, and very key individuals, are really against the introduction of GMOs into the country. And our reasons are quite simple. In the first place, if you listen to the proponents of GM technology, you are told that when the GM comes, it's going to alleviate the issues of the smallholder farmer, it's going to make them more productive, it's going to increase their productivity, and it's going to increase their incomes. Now, when you come to a country like Ghana, and if you look at all our agricultural challenges, they are very much well documented, and we all know what the farmer needs for him or her to be productive. In the first place, as a country, we still rely heavily on rain for our production. So when the rains are good, we produce well. When the rains don't come well, we are in trouble. We have a potential to increase our irrigation across the country, but we are doing just less than 10% of our potential as for irrigation. When it comes to our equipment that farmers need, combined harvesters, tractors, and other mechanization equipment, we don't have them. When you come to areas around access to finance, our farmers are struggling to get loans with interest rates of more than 30%. And then even lastly, without GMOs, our farmers are able to produce to the extent that they are recording post-harvest losses. They are producing to the extent that now, if you go to northern Ghana, our farmers have done so much rice, but they have no market for the rice. And this is done without GMOs. So our first question is, how do we ignore all these challenges of our country and then claim that if you go for GMOs, to go to solve the problem?
So you're saying that they should first focus on these post-harvest losses and using other technology to augment farming processes rather than go for GMOs? Is that what your
that's
issue
one,
is?
That's one of the, a couple of, that's one of them. One of them is that we have fundamental problems. Why don't we solve them whilst we are jumping onto the GMO boat? Our second point, if you look at the GM technology, it is not a technology that is homegrown.
That is what?
Homegrown.
Right.
It is not a Ghanaian technology.
Right.
It's a technology that is being led by powerful multinationals whose aim is to take control of the seed industry. And as a country, our question is, if for fertilizer, we rely on Europe to import fertilizer, now we want to cede our ownership or control of our seed also into the hands of multinationals who control our seed. So that in the next 5 or 10 years, if there's another episode of COVID, or another Russia-Ukraine crisis, or even this Israel and Iran crisis escalates, then, and we are relying on the GM technology, which is not ours, it means that until they bring the technology, we cannot plant. And that is going against the principles of food sovereignty. And as a country, it is sad that we are not concentrating on building our own technology to ensure that we, the people, can rely on the seed that is being produced here domestically.
Okay, a quick point on that, though. What stops us from tapping into GMO, the GMO tech space? Would you be better satisfied? I get the first point, that we've not even dealt with post-harvest harvest losses and all of that. That's one point. But are you suggesting that if we got it right, if we had homegrown technology, the CSIR has been working on some of these better crops, seedlings and all of that. Are you suggesting if we got there, then it would make sense?
You see, the recently developed National Seed Plan, if you go through it, you see the varieties of seeds that our national institutes have developed. For maize alone, they've developed over 54 varieties of maize. Some of them are climate resilient, some of them are nutritious, some of them are resistant to pests and diseases. 54. Out of that, it's only 20, about 20, that are being marketed. The rest, they're not able to market them. They're on the shelves. If you even take soya, they've done about 24. But in the market, there are only 5. So even our local capacity, we've not even exhausted it, let alone think of GMOs. We have the capacity, our scientists have the abilities to produce a lot of varieties of seeds. And they've done that. They are not able to market it because there are problems that are affecting production in Ghana. And we've not addressed it. So the challenge is, how do you leave all what you've done and then you're going to bring a technology that is not even yours? That's the bigger problem. You understand? And the third point is that if you read the narrative about GMO and the experiences in other parts of the world, it's not really a very pleasant or rosy experience. If you read the stories about what the Indian farmers went through regarding the BT mustard, if you read what our neighboring people in Burkina Faso went through regarding the BT cotton, those are not good experiences that Ghana should be latching on and be ready to go for this GM technology. Okay,
so we'll come back to you on some of the dangers inherent in using GMOs and whether there's any positive side to it, because so far you've stressed the negative. But let's also bring in Edward Karewe, General Secretary of the Agricultural Workers Union and the PRO of the Agric Ministry in the person of Tanko Bagbara. Gentlemen, thank you for joining the conversation. Mr. Karewe, can you hear me? Tanko, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. Let me just start with you, Tanko, or maybe let me bring in Edward Karewe, and then we'll come to you. Sweetie will come to you on what your reaction is, initial reaction to some of these. Mr. Karewe, what is your take on these GMOs and the stance adopted by the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana? Bismarck here makes the point that, listen, we have post-harvest losses. So it's not as though we were not producing enough. We are producing quite a bit, but a lot of it is lost to post-harvest losses. And then indigenous scientific work has been done. I cited the CSIR, and he mentioned maize, 54 varieties. We are using just about 20. He mentioned soya, over 20 varieties. We are using only 5. We've not even exhausted local capacity, and we want to do what exactly? What's your take, Mr. Karewe? You would have to unmute, sir. I can hear you now.
Okay, thank you, sir. Let me say good morning to you, and then Bismarck and all those who are listening to us. I think the point is well made. If you look at development policy, it's meant to address issues in context. Otherwise, if you have a policy that does not address the specific issues around you, then that policy may be far-fetched. Bismarck did indicate the fundamental things about agriculture. what are the challenges. And that has always been our position. That first, to be able to come up with solutions that are enduring, that are sustainable, we need to examine what our problems are. And if you look at all our challenges, which all of us know and our viewers also know, so I don't need to belabor the point, from production to harvesting and then to marketing, we can find out that GMO is not a solution at all. It's not a solution. And you see, it's just troubling that there are state institutions that are bent on bringing in this GMO, no matter all the reasonable arguments and suggestions we give to them.
Why do you think that is? I'll let you go on, but why do you think they are trying willy-nilly to bring it in?
I'm thinking this way because as far back in 2018, the Minister of Foreign Affairs invited us to a stakeholder meeting at the ministry there to speak to our diplomats about this emerging thing called GMO. In fact, all the proponents, including the National Biosafety Authority, were represented. And those professors who are advocating for the GMO were all present. We had 2 sessions at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we were also there. At the close of the day, they made a simple test that all the diplomats who were sitting in the room, would they go for GMO based on the arguments both sides have made, or they will not go for? I'll tell you that I think the number was about 40-something, the number. Only 2 said that they will go with GMO. But all the rest said no, they will not go with GMO. Look, the argument is simple. GMO is not part of our solution. In fact, if Galamsey today is destroying all the farms, what can GMO do? When Galamsey today is destroying the river bodies and poisoning them and salting the rivers, how can GMO be a solution to that? How can GMO be a solution to when we cut down all our forests and other farmlands? How can GMO be a solution to that? But then, based on all these arguments, the ministry, we put pressure on the ministry to come out. And as far back as 2019 or so, the then Minister for Agriculture came out and made it categorical that Ghana will not go in for GMO, and that we have got enough scientists and scientific work which can boost agricultural production without going into GMO. So I don't know where the National Biosafety Authority and those who are researching into the GMO have the authority to continue to research into GMO, and with whose funds. We should go and find out where they have got the funds to do that. Is it the state funds? The budget that government has been struggling to give to state institutions, is it that one that they use to do the research on the GMO, contrary to government's own policy? That we are not ready for what? GMO. I just saw a news item, I hope it is true, from the current Minister of Agri, saying that they have not authorized commercialization of the 14 GMO seeds that they say they have come out with. Then who are they working for? The Mother Ministry is saying that they are not ready. Not today, even in the past and now. They say they are not ready and they are not ready for it. Why should our scientists, those who are behind it, and particularly the NBA, National Biosafety Authority, continue to research into it and then want all of us to be excited about it when it is not a solution at all?
Okay, Mr. Karewe, we have the PRO for the Ministry of Agri joining us, Mr. Egbagbara. He's on the phone with us now. I'm sure you've been following the conversations to this point. How does this sit with you? They've raised some concerns about, moving away from subsistence farming, post-harvest
losses.
Post-harvest losses, among others. And they're saying that GMOs are not the solution to the problems that exist, especially when in the agri sector. How do you respond to all these?
And a very good morning to my Uncle Kirwe, and your other family. Yes, as I mentioned about, it's been a story when this came up. We know that how this country, and 2011, April 1, has 6 months this time. And therefore, we thought at the minute, in response,
Mr. Kariwe, actually, Mr. Bagbara, but our sincere apologies. I'm sorry I have to do this. Just hold for me briefly. Let's also bring into the conversation Eric Amaning Okorie. He joins the conversation. He deals in biotech, among others. So we get to know what exactly this implies for us. Mr. Okorie, good morning to you. Thank you for joining the conversation. Hello, Mr. Okorie, can you hear me, sir? Mr. Okorie, by the way, is Executive Director, National Biosafety Authority. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you very well. I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you now. Quickly, so we'd just like to find out, and my colleague Sweetie Abachi will come in shortly, what is your reaction to all of this, genetically modified organisms? The peasant farmers, the General Agricultural Workers Union, they are saying no, and there seems to be some push to guide this. Looking at the global extent of it, why it is being supposedly foisted on us. From where you sit in biotech, what does this mean? And is it the right way to go?
Yeah, so thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Let me first explain what the National Biosafety Authority did, which are part of these reactions from the parties you talked about, the Peasant farmers and the others. Now, the Biosafety Authority received applications from Bayer, West and Central Africa, and Syngenta, South Africa, to register some events that they have in Ghana to register. So when the application came, they did research into those products, but events that being brought against some basically GMO. So we looked at this on those different modified crops. There were 8 different maize varieties and 6 different maize varieties.
Mr. Okorie, yes. we are having some slight challenges with hearing you. If you could reposition yourself.
Yes, I'm trying to do that. Am I okay?
I think it's better now.
Yes, so we did risk assessment for those we received, and there was something wrong, and there was no difference between those genetically modified crops that, or not crops, grains that we work on or they want to bring to Ghana, and what we have in Ghana again, except the other genes that they have. And we checked the databases to see if they have been in use anywhere. We found that those genetically modified organisms have been used over 10 years in about 15 countries. They have been eaten, they have been processed into whatever for over 10 years in about 15 countries already. So we went ahead and registered them in Ghana. So what actually the Biosafety Authority has done is registering the events in Ghana. What that means is that we have not brought those GMOs into Ghana yet, and we have registered them. We have certified that they are good. They can be used for food, they can be used for feed, they can be used for processing. The registration does not allow planting in Ghana because they did not apply for environmental release. They just applied for food, feed, and for processing. Now, in case any Ghanaian individual or industry company wants to bring it in, the person has to get import permit before he can bring it in. So that is the situation. Now, asking whether they are good, as far as we sit as the regulatory institution, for food they are fine, they are the same as the conventional ones we have here. And so we are fine, we certify that they are safe. And again, the question of do we need it? I would say that already we've been getting some calls from some individuals and companies wanting to bring such types of genetically modified grains into Ghana to be processed into something else, animal feed and other.
Are these individuals within Ghana or outside of Ghana?
Pardon me?
Are these individuals within Ghana or outside of Ghana?
Within Ghana, right within Ghana. They've been calling that, Mr. Corey, we are not getting enough of these. We want to bring in GMO coffee to be processed. I want this to be processed. And so already we've been getting that call. You see,
and do this for me, for the sake of analysis. About how many people are we looking at? Because if you have the number of farmers we do, millions, and you tell me maybe 2 people or 5 people or 10 people or even 1,000 people. So put it into context.
This is not a matter of farming. It's industry. They are not going to plant it. It's not for planting.
So it's for people who process.
It's going to farming farm. This is not going to go into farm. It's for the industry. You see, so it is not business with the farmers. And the industry, I've got about 2 different industries in Ghana calling whether they can bring it in and the procedure through which they can bring it.
2 different industries.
3 different businessmen calling to find out whether they can bring this in for sale. So if it was for planting, that would have been for farmers. These are not for planting. Direct to be processed into other products. So that is the situation.
All right, hold for me. I'm not doing this. I'm just going to bring in, unless Sweetie Abochi, you have something. I'm going to bring in Bismarck and Edward because they are into this. Any question? Maybe one briefly, both of you, and then we'll throw that to Mr. Okorie for reactions.
Right. Sorry. The response from the NB is quite interesting. I wanted to find out from him. If you look at the acts that set up the National Biosecurity Authority, they are supposed to have a board that approves all these processes. And then as part of the board, we know that there is a rep from the Ministry of Food and Agric that's supposed to sit on the board. And so the ministry are supposed to be aware of all these things that have gone on. So the question for him is the board aware? Is the ministry aware? And can he share with the general public the reports that indicates how they conducted the assessment for the general public? Because that's what the acts mandate them to do.
All right, thank you. Let me come to Edward. No, hold for me. I just want the 2 together, then you answer them.
No, let me respond to this very quickly.
Go ahead.
It is simple. He said Ministry of what?
Food and Agric.
Very good. The board has, the NPA is supposed to be headed by a board, and the board is the decision-making body. It was the board that made decisions for this. And the board is represented by the Plant Protection and Regulatory Services Directorate. And the director now is Mr. Eric Quaid, who was in the meeting when the board was debating. You see, before making decision, the board debated. And Minister of Agric was there. Mr. Eric Quaid, the director, was there. He contributed before the board made that decision. So yes, the board made it. And after making the decision, we wrote all the regulatory agencies. We worked with Food and Drug Authority, we worked with Customs, we worked with PTRC, Ghana Standards Authority, Environmental Protection Agency. We wrote to all of them that this is the decision. Now, again, the law, to answer the question, the law says that upon request, anybody who has any interest in getting any document concerning the application should make it known to the authority, and we will release it. So the law is upon request. So anybody, let me announce it, anybody who has an interest in this matter, just contact us at the NBA, and we will give you the decision document. We can give you the risk assessment document to look at it. And so it is that transparent. It was the board that made the decision. Thank you.
Are you satisfied?
So is it not curious that the MOFE statement says they don't know anything about it?
The Ministry of Food and Agriculture. Yes, which is what Edward Karewe was referencing.
Yes.
By
so
Brian.
Is it not curious?
How do you react to that, Mr. Correa?
Pardon me?
So the statement from the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, they claim no knowledge of this.
Yes.
No. That is, in fact, that statement was made by their PRO. The PRO should have contacted PPRSD or S. So when I saw that discrepancy. So I called the chief director. I said, Chief Director, this is what is happening. And you were represented by the director of PPRSD. And so your position is at variance with that of the board on which you are represented. So the fault is coming from inaccurate information from the Ministry of Agriculture, and that doesn't mean that the writing was not done. And I'm saying that anybody interested can contact us, and we will give him all the documents.
All right. Before we do Edward Karewe,
before I let him go, I'm curious.
Edward hasn't posed this question. Let's not forget that. But
right.
Let's bring in the PRO of the Agri Ministry. Sweetie, I was just alerting you that Edward hasn't made his question, but we can bring in the PRO to react.
Edward, go ahead.
Okay, so let's do this.
My question is, Mr. Okori claims that GMO poses no risk. I want to ask him.
No, I said
is he aware
GMOs that we have worked on do not pose. I don't say GMOs poses a GMOs no risk. The GMO question we verify and we are the end post.
I think both of them are silent. Who's speaking?
I'm asking them.
So, Mr. Karewe, we'll come back to you. Your connection is not so good. We'll come back to you. On the issue, what I was trying to intimate earlier, on the issue that Mr. Okorie was speaking of, he made mention of the Agric Ministry. We have the PRO, Mr. Bagbara. Can you clarify for us, Mr. Bagbara, what the situation is per the statement versus what Mr. Okorie is saying? What's your reaction?
Thank you once again. Our statement, we sought to lay the fears of our farmers as there were a lot of agitation as far as these products are concerned. We wanted to assure them that the ministry has not released any form of seed or planting materials. Because normally we have a procedure through the Plant Protection and Regulatory Services Directorate. We have the National Varietal Release Council Committee, which is under the National Seed Council. So normally we have a procedure and a process to validate and release new planting materials to farmers. They know the process. And so it was surprising that there was an uprising against the ministry that would endorse the use of these products that have been released. So clearly we want to tell our farmers that we will continue to monitor and ensure that seed and planting material used are approved and have gone through the right procedure for farmers to use.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Can I come in here?
Is this Mr. Okorie?
Yes, this is Mr. Okorie. But you see, I like what the PRO is saying. Now, what we need to understand from what he's saying is that he's talking about seeds and plants. For seeds and plants, the Varietal Release Committee must release them, approve before it comes out. That is the case of the BT cowpea for environmental release, meaning for planting, which SARI applied for. When we approved it, they went to the Varietal Release committee for their approval, and they are with them. They are working with them before farmers can plant. That is the kind of thing the PRO is talking now. You see, what we are talking about the 14 applications we released, are not for planting. They are not seeds. You understand? They are not seeds at all. They are for food, feed, and for processing. They are very different. And so, yes, the Ministry of Food and Agriculture was involved, and the decision was taken by the board according to the law. And they are for food and feed. And so, if anybody wants to come in, the person gets import permit from us, and then the person takes the relevant permit from Food and Drugs Authority. Then you bring it in for the processing that they want. This is not seed, and so Ministry of Agriculture's information is quite different from what we have. There is a kind of misunderstanding here. What happens is that I wish the PRO had cited the press release that we came out first. Then he could have put the Ministry of Agriculture's position in the right context. So that is, we are talking about two different things: food, feed, and for processing, and not for planting. Does not go through the varietal release committee. So we are talking about different.
But Mr. Correa, before we bring in Edward Karewe, before Sweetie brings him in, is it not only a matter of time? If you bring it in for processing and all of that, it's only a matter of time, to be fair, following the examples of other countries. You bring it in, start from there, it's only a matter of time, and then it gets into other spheres. Is that not the truth?
No, that grains are different from seeds. Grains are different from seeds.
I mean the approvals for GMOs. Eventually, once you start bringing them in for processing, you have one foot through the door, and eventually it cascades into other aspects, doesn't it?
Other aspects like what? I don't get you. What kind of aspects are you talking about?
Where it can be used for food, not just processing, not just for other, but it will get into our food, it will get into processed elements that are, on the market for consumption.
Of course, the National Biosafety Authority has approved it for food, for feed, and for processing. These three.
I see.
Yes, for food, feed, and process. And we did the risk assessment. They are good for food. We did risk assessment. They are good for feed, and they are good to be processed into whatever. So these three, I don't know what aspects you expect outside these three. I will advise that we take our time to read the documents around these decisions by the board of the National Biosafety Authority and get the proper understanding. So let's
Mr. Correa, just to intervene, I didn't mention any category outside of the three. At a point, you mentioned processing. So I kept focusing on feed and other things, not necessarily for human consumpstion. So it was from what you were saying. I never suggested that I was outside the three. But, Sweetie, can we bring in Edward Karewe?
I'm curious to know, there are some global restrictions on genetically modified crops, for example. So if we are going to be using these to augment our farming processes and the rest, are we going to export them? The concern is that we might be losing some foreign revenue. Would that be the case? Because we cannot export some of these produce. Mr. Okore.
Hello?
I'm saying that, did you hear my question?
Can you repeat, please?
There are concerns that we might lose some foreign revenue because there are some global restrictions on exporting genetically modified crops, for example. If this is the way to go, will we be, in fact, losing some foreign revenue because then we cannot export our produce?
Okay. I understand your question. So, what can we export from Ghana? The GMOs we can export from Ghana are the GMOs that have been planted in Ghana and they are meant for that purpose. One, that is not what we are discussing here. And yes, it can happen. Ghana can export. That is when the farmers grow them in Ghana and they want to export. That's after For example, I'm using this example. After SARI has come out, or right, people has approved SARI the difficulty, and farmers have planted and harvested large quantities and they want to export. What I know, I don't GMO promotion, I do GMO regulation, but what I know is that there is a huge market. Yes, that countries have restricted the growing of GMOs to those countries, but they import. Europe is importing GMO for processing. Europe is importing, China imports, and Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, and 80 billion people GMO. So if the Chinese government can plant GMOs, there's that market. And let's put on record that I am not sorry do this speak like this. I'm a promoter. But
Mr. Correa, the positioning again, we can barely for about 30 seconds, there's interference. I wish you could reposition again and just make that point, please.
Do you hear me now?
It's better. Can you just go back a bit and make your point again?
I said, I am a GMO regulator. I'm not a GMO promoter. So the person is asking me to talk as if I'm a promoter. So I want to get this on record that in answering the question as a regulator, if the GMO has been approved in Ghana by the National Biosecurity Authority and farmers have planted, for example, the BTCLP, which the Varietal Release Committee is working on with SARI, if it comes out and farmers plant and farmers want to export so that they get their money, there's a huge market out there.
But that was
Brazil,
your concern,
Colombia,
right?
Argentina.
In your statements that you released, your concern was that you cannot export some of these produce because there are constraints on exporting them.
Yes, so
No, sorry, I was just bringing back Mr. Tete into the conversation.
The issues that he raised. You see, I think Mr. Okore is doing damage control. Because one, when the news of the approval of the commercialization came, it wasn't the National Biosecurity Authority that released the first statement. It was actually a U.S. journal that first released the statement that Ghana has approved GMOs. So why didn't the NBA release the first statement? They didn't do it. Then Daily Graphic took the story and also published it. They still didn't release it until we released the statement before they came out. So if they were clear about that, why did they start the release from day one?
Okay, hold that.
Number two,
for me.
let me just add a couple.
Right.
Number two, he says that some companies are already calling out to him for them to approve GMOs into the country. And there are two main crops, maize and soya. It's either, and I'm surprised that he's saying that MOFA was part of the decision. Because if you look at the policy objective of MOFA, even under the new PFD 2.0, is to ensure that farmers increase their productivity and also export maize and soya. In fact, if you look at the President's State of the Nation address, he mentions that Ghana is now a net exporter of maize, meaning we've produced so much maize that we are now exporting. But Mr. Okoro and his team are telling us that the maize we have is not enough, so they've given approval for us to import GM maize into the country. For which industry? Currently, farmers have produced maize, they are not getting market. So is it saying that the companies that are there, they don't know that there's maize available, but it's the GM maize that they want?
Okay, I want to bring back Edward Kariwe because it appears we've left you out for a while. You've been following. Any reactions so far?
Well, I still want to put some questions before Okori. And then
so Mr. Kariwe, the caveat was that it was one question. Bismarck did that initially. Yes, there was a follow-up, but just make it, limit to one, maximum two, if you can.
All right, thank you. One, he's talking about that some individuals and institutions are asking for GMO products to be used in their processing. Processing what? And for whose consumption?
Exactly.
What is the difference between the seed, which now culminates into the grain, and then the grain itself, which is a GMO, processed for whose consumption? Are they going to process here and export it to outside countries, or they're going to export it and sell it to us to eat? You see? So again, I'm finding it difficult to also understand him saying that he's a regulator but not a promoter. If you regulate per your choices, you allow GMO, you are promoting GMO.
Exactly.
You are promoting GMO. That's the logic. If you, per your regulation, if you say no GMO, then you are not promoting GMO. No, he cannot, at this point, try to take a cover, a safe cover to say that I am just a regulator, I am not a promoter. The work of a regulator is either to promote or constrain. That is the work of a regulator, unless he has a superior explanation to that. Otherwise, this is our understanding. So you can't run away from the fact that per your job and per what you are doing, per what you have done so far, you are promoting GMO.
Mr. Kariwe, no, Mr. Okorie, if you're still with us, just your final thoughts and reaction or response to that, and then we can wrap it up.
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, very good. So I want to comment on what the gentleman just said. The regulator has two reactions, yes and no. We say no where we find something wrong during our risk assessment, and then we stop that GMO from coming in. We say that does not make us anti-GMO. That does not make us it makes us a regulator. We say yes when we have done our risk assessment, risk evaluation, and the product is safe. That does not make us a promoter. And so a regulator is a regulator, and we have two responses, yes and no. So if at this time we have said yes, it doesn't make us promoters, we still remain regulators. A time will come when an application comes in, and we may say, no, that doesn't make us anti. So a regulator is a regulator. That's our job.
Right.
Two, we are not doing damage control. We are not doing damage control. We sent out information first. USDA, the publication by USDA was done by Mr. Joshua Taylor. Mr. Joshua got the information after we sent the information out, and before Joshua published it, Joshua called me personally to verify the information. And so he got it from what we have done and sent out. And so this is not damage control, and they got it from the USDA. And so it doesn't mean that the USDA was the first institution to bring it out. No, they got it from us, from somewhere, and they called me that this is what we have heard. Is it true? I said yes, and then he published it. So Joshua can be contacted to ascertain what I'm saying. So it is not damage control at all. Our point is that we take our time to study the situation, study the law, read widely so that we understand how the GMOs are handled and managed.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Eric Amening Okorie, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the National Biosafety Authority. You were saying something, you can wrap it up in about 30 seconds for us.
Yeah, he mentioned that they are not promoters. In their own statements, if you look at the last paragraph, titled The Call to Reject GM Seeds, the third sentence, it reads, and I quote, "We wish to reiterate the fact that the improved yield and sustained food security will rather inure to the benefit of farmers rather than impoverish them as speculated in the media." This is a position that he has taken already. So how can a regulator tell us that the GMCs that are yet to be approved, he can assure us that it will give farmers improved yield? That's the position he has taken already. And we've been part of a lot of stakeholder workshops where the NBA's position is more of a promoter than a regulator.
Okay.
So the statements he's making now that they are just regulators, it doesn't wash. And the fact that it was first published by one gentleman, the fact is that the news broke out in the Ghanaian media space through a foreign journal and not through the NBA.
Okay.
And that's the fact. The third point is that When it comes to
and please make that the final point.
Yes, please. When it comes to issues of food security, Ghana's aim is to be a net exporter of major staples, including maize and soya. So I don't know why the NBA is interested in allowing the importation of GM soya into the country. And then my last point. Last year, we had a soybean stakeholder validation workshop where all the soybean actors in the country, from farmers to processors to marketers, were there. And we all agreed that looking at the premium price that soya fetches, that's the non-GM soya, Ghana should tread on a path of cultivation and promoting non-GM soya to attract premium prices. So even the soya industry is well in support of what non-GM. So which company is he saying that they've told him that they prefer GM? They should come again. In fact, their statement with this more question than others.
Okay.
And just before I go, in the next few minutes or so, we'll be having a press conference for our colleagues on this same issue, and other issues will come out very well.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Tanko Bagbara, PRO for Ministry of Agriculture. Your final words, please.
Yes, so I think the statement from the National Biosecurity Authority has vindicated us as a ministry that certainly it's not meant for planting, or it's not meant for cultivation, and I think we draw something from that. But personally, this is my personal I want to say. You see, anytime GMO is mentioned, the ordinary Ghanaian gets panic. What is it about GMO? Can the scientists do us the honor of educating us whether GMO products are harmful or they are good? We need, as an ordinary Ghanaian, to get the understanding of what GMO products are. But I want to believe, again, at my personal level, that if you visit most of our supermarkets, we are consuming GMO products. It is there. We are consuming it as a country already. And I want to conclude that certainly the ministry has the authority to issue permits for import and export of, let me say, plant and animal products. And to the best of my knowledge, no request has been brought before the ministry requesting for any permit to import. So far, we haven't seen such. So we need to allay our fears as far as farmers are concerned that we are not using GMO products as planting materials. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanko Bagbara, who is a PRO for Ministry of Agriculture. In the studio with us is Bismarck Tete, Executive Director of Peasant Farmers Association. But Benjamin, we're wrapping it up. You want to share some final words on this?
Oh, no, I am done on this. We also had Edward Karawe of the Agricultural Workers Union joining the conversation. And, of course, Mr. Corrier of the Biosafety Authority as well. We're grateful to all of you gentlemen, including Mr. Tete in the studio. Do stay with us. There's still a lot more action coming your way before we wrap it up on the AM show.